This pandemic, I was reading the other day that it's sort of like a nemesis in a slasher movie, that every time you feel kind of safe, there it comes popping back up. And so it's delightful to have this magazine and the student voices in a time when we've all of us have felt so isolated and disconnected. We have this book to bring us together in ways that celebrate the arts and student voices in the arts. I wanted to make note that our editors made efforts in this edition to organize the themes of the selections to move from darker kinds of themes to lighter kinds of themes. So they were very conscientious of being in a kind of isolation and darkness and coming together and looking for light even in these dark times. So with that, I want to introduce the leader of this book, Christian Litzy, who is not only the editor, managing editor, copy editor, jack of all trades, learning what to do to put this thing together, and also a contributor of both poetry and fiction in this book. So, Christian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Litzy. I am the managing editor of Talking Leaves, as I'm sure you guys have figured out by this point. I was really excited when I took over this position almost a year ago, but I had no idea what to expect. It was mostly just zeal, wanting to get in, wanting to be a part of this project that is largely about student voices. And that is what I learned was the most important thing about doing this work, about putting all the hours editing, compiling, messaging people, making sure every edit was okay with people. All of that was worth it so that their voices could get across. It became especially important to me because as somebody who's beginning with creative writing, it was hard for me to find somewhere to put my own voice. Almost 2 years ago, Breonna Taylor was killed, and I had written a poem about that, but I didn't know where to put it out, if anyone would still be interested a year after her death. And now 2 years after her death in reading it. But I brought it here and it was accepted and my voice was heard, and I wanted to provide that for so many other students. With that in mind, I am going to read from this year's edition of Talking Leaves, and I'm going to read the poem I contributed to it, Say Her Name. Child of the fall city, of the last days of the 20th century, on the end of history and the beginning of tragedy, yet you saw something splendid in it. You saw hope. You saw change. You saw people needing help. You heeded the call. You put in the hours. You saved lives. Say her name. You knew the poverty around the decaying city. You saw the worst. That city cannot hide its failures. Towers crumbling beneath hooves. People destitute in vice and violence. Somehow you made it through. You grew and prospered. Say her name. The city sent cloaked agents to your front door, 32 greetings, primed for no reason, unleashed with no remorse. Each knock rippled through crowded spaces, tearing through the reality of poverty, race, power. Blasting holes in the night, your sunshine bled out. Say her name. As you left that city, grime and crime fading away, something was left behind in your wake, outrage and distrust. Loss and suffering burned. You donned the martyr's cloak. Say their names. The streets flooded with molten hot hate. Boiling blood filled the gutters, the bridges, the highways. Sanguine rage flowed. Armored assassins saw to that. Blows, bullets, blasphemy against righteous force. Yet the people gathered. For you they gathered. More were gunned down in the river city. They gathered. When justice seemed lost and the poison fog dispersed in the streets, they still gathered for you. Say her name. The wheels of justice are slow-moving, rusted works, unable to crank out fairness. Now they embrace the slimy grease of fortune. No charges, all heartless, only darkness. The evidence was clear as their intent. Push gentrification, sweep aside corpses, tear down, build up. The shattered lives and dashed buildings left behind. Say her name. Where is your justice, Breonna? Where is the retribution for your death? Why are the cowards who butchered you free men? Was life's worth only valuable as the millions traded for its taking? I think not. Your life was priceless. Say her name. I'm angry because you were a daughter of my home, a sister to me. Because you had a good life. Because you had a good job. You were making it, but that didn't matter. Bullets with systemic hate behind them don't care what they strike. Say her name. People try to forget you. Another year, new problems, and your body stays in place, cold, gone, forgotten. But I will not forget you. I will tell anyone who will listen, and I'll yell it at those who won't. Breonna Taylor. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, so much, not only for your beautiful poem and your reading today, but for all your hard work. Christian and I were finding places to meet in Seymour that were COVID safe to try to get this work done. It's just been unbelievable. So it's wonderful to hear that voice. Our next voice is from Zoe Lawless, and I believe she's going to read 2 poems for us. Zoe is an English major and a first-time contributor to Talking Leaves.
The first poem I'm going to read is called Grieving a Constant Companion. It's hard to describe the emptiness in me, the assumed daily expectation that I will see her again in casual passing, but her dusty belongings argue otherwise. Her things so entangled with mine, I'm not sure I know what to claim as my own, and that's a fitting representation of our souls, intertwined for eternity, but now disjointed for this lifetime. I miss her. But I know she is with me, always. Thank you. The second poem I'm going to read is Alphabetic Springtime, much happier. A cool spring morning with bees bumblingly buzzing, birds cheerily chirping, and dew dazzling ethereally as it balances on shy flowers and blades of new and bright green grass, now ankle height, and quite indignant when it comes to justifiably tickling ankles and keeping ubiquitous weeds at bay. Lilacs still sleep in early March, but soon none will rival their eye-opening beauty and their encapsulating perfume. Quite easily, I will be drawn to them, reminiscing over years so long ago, and yet they are only the utterance of memories acquired yesterday. Voraciously, I know that when those lilacs bloom, the xeranthemum are not far behind, and they too will yearn to be recognized as the zenith turns to pale colors.
Thank you, Zoe, so much. It's delightful to hear both your poems. We have a little bit of a switch up on the program today, unless Ethan or Alexa has arrived since I saw folks coming in. They are not able to be here today, but we have another contributor, David Walby, who said that he would be willing to share some of his work with us. So David has contributed prose as well as art. Come on down, David. And so I don't know if you'd like to tell us about 1 or 2 of your images, or if you'd like to read 2 to 3 pages of your prose, or combination thereof, that would be great. Oh, a poem. He has a poem, too. A poem is perfect.
Thank you. As Dr. Thiefker Bailey said, I am David Walby. I'm an English major here, looking ultimately towards potentially a career as a creative writer. But anyway, this is my poem. Nothing for me here. It's on page 27 if you're following along. Staring down distraught at the loss of my love, meters beeping loud and coming to rest, the line and my heart drop as one, my wife, oh, the woman that I love, taken from me at such a time. What am I to do alone in this world without a one to caress? I stand there weeping as her body lies growing cold. No more is the woman I loved present in this world, but in the next waiting so for me to come in time, but there soon I shall be, for there is nothing left for me here. Thank you.
Thank you, David, so much. Especially appreciate you stepping up. And David's art is dispersed throughout the book, and I wanted to call attention to Alexa Boyd's beautiful artwork on the cover. And we had a lot of fun picking that, especially since the leaves really look like lips that are talking in particular for this issue. So Talking Leaves has become, last year we connected with the Tree Campus project, and it's a beautiful synergistic way for the arts to celebrate nature and for nature to become part of arts. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Joan Polson, our Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, and invite her to tell you about the Tree Campus grant and project.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to first thank all of the creative contributors to Talking Leaves for their amazing work and for your courageous self-expression. I'd also like to thank Dr. Seifker-Bailey for your hard work as their faculty mentor for this publication and helping to see it through to fruition. And of course, I'd like to thank the Division of Liberal Arts, Dr. George Towers and Vicki Cruzy for their unwavering support of their humanities and creative activity on our campus and in our community. So I'm here to recognize and to celebrate the second year of our collaboration between the Talking Leaves launch and the IUPUC Tree Campus efforts, which are really part of a larger set of efforts aimed at sustainability. IUPUC has the designation of Tree Campus USA from the National Arbor Day Foundation, and we're one of only about 300 campuses in the country to have such a designation. To maintain this status, we're required to engage in several efforts each year to promote the presence and maintenance of trees, as well as provide some educational outreach about trees. And this event and readings about trees help us to fulfill that mission. Aristotle is credited with saying the aim of art is not to represent the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. And so the readings that follow my remarks as works of art really help us to consider the significance of our connection with trees, with nature, and with our larger connections with all forms of life on Earth. I want to close just by expressing my sincere thanks to the creative contributors, liberal arts, and Dr. Seifker-Bailey for partnering on this and being heavy lifters in our contributions, in your contributions for our collaboration. In particular, I'd like to thank Jay Lessandrini and Dr. Wills for their willingness to provide readings about trees and the environment. So thank you for helping our campus remain a tree campus.
We just keep thanking everyone because we are so thankful. It takes so many hands and so many voices to make all of this come together. And one of those super supporters has been Jay Lessandrini. He's helped us with poetry editing, he's helped us with marketing, he's helped us with flyers, he made this beautiful backdrop, and he is himself a creative writer, a fiction writer, whose novel is being published. The title of his novel is perfect for our campus tree reading. It's called Bending with the Wind, and he's going to read a chapter from his novel that addresses that theme.
So I'll start by saying, Lisa's a little bit ahead on that. It's not ready to be published yet. I'm hoping to find an agent is what I'm trying to do right now. Just finished the 8th draft last night, so hopefully I'll be sending that out, and I've sent it out already and didn't get a whole lot of response, but I've made some changes. I think it'll be a little bit better. So right. So the title of it is Bending with the Wind, and for those, I mean, that's kind of a metaphor for the, I mean, trees, kind of bend and are resilient, and the main character in the story is a little bit resilient, and I use it slightly differently, and I'm going to read the chapter where I mention that, and the story itself is about a professional pitcher who never wanted to be a baseball player, but he just it kind of happened, and he never really until the end decides that he doesn't want to play and walks away from the game. So this chapter is he and his father are going on he's looking for colleges, so it's about him and his father going on a college visit. An embossed envelope from St. Jude College arrived addressed to Mr. Walter Schreiber. Let me start over. This is in the way, so I'm not sure how to do this exactly. Let me start over. An embossed envelope from St. Jude College addressed to Mr. Walt Schreiber arrived about a week before Christmas. It was the first time Walt had been addressed as Mr. since he was a little kid, and he kind of liked it. Inside the envelope was a card with a photo of a snow-covered building on the front that Walt would later learn was Clement Memorial Union, and inside were the words, "Merry Christmas from St. Jude College." Below that, Walt read a handwritten note. "Merry Christmas, Walt. Hope to get down to see you play this spring. Say hello to your dad for me. Coach Woodrow Sprague." Walt wasn't sure what to make from it. He had met the St. Jude coach over the summer, but his name wasn't Sprague. It was Guilford or Guilfoyle, something like that. And that guy didn't act like he knew Walt's father either. He took the card into the kitchen where his dad was sitting at a table looking through the other mail. "You know a guy named Woodrow Sprague?" Walt asked. "Woody?" Chance questioned. "What makes you ask that?" "He sent me a Christmas card. He said to say hi." Chance reached for the card, read it, then chuckled. "Wow, he must be coaching at St. Jude now. I guess Gifford must have gotten that assistant job at Michigan." "Who's Woody?" Walt asked. "I played with him for a summer back in the day in Janesville. He was a hell of a pitcher, a good arm. Not live like yours, but good nonetheless. I haven't thought about him in years. I can't believe he even remembers me." "When did you play in Janesville?" Walt asked. "After college. It was a summer thing until I found a teaching job," Chance said, still looking at the card and mumbling to himself. "I guess your father never told you that he played professional baseball for the Cubs," Maggie said. "If you could call it that," Chance said, pulling his eyes away from the card. "Did you play baseball?" Maggie asked, as if she were a prosecutor questioning the defendant, following with more rapid-fire questions. "Did you play baseball for Janesville Cubs? Did you play baseball for the Janesville Cubs and get paid for it?" "You know I did," Chance said. "Then case closed," Maggie said, turning to Walt. "Your father played professional baseball for the Cubs." "It was Class D ball," Chance said. "The team doesn't even exist anymore." "Why didn't you ever tell me about that?" Walt asked. "It wasn't a big deal, not even worth talking about. They needed a backup catcher, and I was available." "They asked him to come back and play the following year, and the Cubs even invited him to spring training," Maggie said. "Why didn't you go?" Walt asked. Maggie waited for Chance to reply. It was a question she had always been afraid to ask and was curious to hear his answer. "Janesville High School offered me a real job, and I took it. By the time I got invited to spring training, I had already made the commitment to the high school. I was never good enough to play in the majors. I was probably not good enough to play above Class D, and I knew it." Chance then looked over at Maggie. "And besides, I wasn't about to leave your mom here unmarried while I went off to chase a dream. I knew she was out of my league, just like the Cubs, and I was worried if she started dating other guys, she might figure it out for herself." Maggie laughed. "Don't kid yourself. I always knew I was out of your league." Walt laughed. He laughed and wondered. He wondered why his father had never mentioned playing professional baseball, and wondered whether his father might secretly wish he had gone to spring training that year and given it a shot instead of staying in Wisconsin and marrying his mother. And he wondered whether his mother would have waited for him if he had gone. He was also wondering how good of a catcher his father might really have been. "Earth to Walt," Chance said. "Huh?" Walt said, coming out of his trance. "I was saying that we should drive over to St. Jude and check out the campus during break. Maybe I'll give Woody a call and we can get lunch with him." "Yeah, sure," Walt said, still thinking about his father's playing days. "That is, if you're interested in St. Jude," Chance said. "I don't want to waste Woody's time if you're not." Walt was interested, but not as much about playing baseball at St. Jude as he was in learning more about his father's baseball career. He was hoping to pump Woody for some stories. As it turned out, Woody was headed to Rockford for the holidays to see his parents and wouldn't be on campus when Walt and Chance had planned to go. So right after the new year, Walt and his father drove 2 hours northeast to the small town of Berlin, Wisconsin, and the two of them walked the snow-covered grounds of St. Jude College, entering any buildings that were open and peeking through the windows of some that weren't. Chance said that it was like shopping for a car on Sunday when the salesmen weren't around to pester you into buying something. You could take your time, kick the tires, judge for yourself. Chance talked as they walked, and Walt could see his father's words trailing in the breath that escaped his mouth on that cold January day. He spoke about the choices that boys make which determine what kind of men they will become. He told Walt that he needed to understand that not making a choice is actually a choice in itself and is accompanied by the same responsibilities and consequences as taking a direct action. When I was your age, I went off and fought in the war. A lot of people would say that I didn't really have a choice, that we were all expected to go. But I did choose to go. Your mom and I want you to go to college, and we each have our own reasons for that. I want you to know that it's still your choice. If you go, I want you to choose it, not for me or your mom. You're going to spend the rest of your life being faced with obligations. I want you to understand that your first obligation is always to yourself. Chance paused for a moment to let his words sink into Walt's brain. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the day-to-day stuff like taking out the trash or washing the dishes or calling your mom on her birthday when you're not living at home anymore. Those obligations don't go away. I'm talking about the big things. I'm talking about where you want to go to college or whether you want to go at all. I'm talking about who you want to marry or whether you want to get married at all. There's an old saying that at the end of your life, you're not going to regret the things you did, but rather the things you didn't do. You see, Walt, most people spend their lives bending with the wind and never once take the opportunity to find out how strong they really are. And I think at the end of life, that's what a person will regret most, not knowing how strong they really are. Chance stopped talking and looked at Walt, who was walking stride for stride, his head down, his hands in his pockets, his breath whistling through his nose and mouth into the frigid air. Chance had never spoken to Walt like that. He had always talked to him as if he were an adult, but never as a man, and that scared Walt into silence. He wanted to reach out for his father's hand. He imagined pulling his own hand out of his pocket and reaching over, but knew it was too late for that. He knew he was too old for that now. Chance didn't know where those words had come from. He had not prepared them as he would a lecture for his English class, but instead had summoned them in the moment, and wondered whether it had been the right time for such words. He wondered whether he might be able to take them back in a way that would allow Walt to remain a boy for a little while longer. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jay, so much. It's so exciting to get a preview of your novel. And we wish you the best of luck finding a place to get that published so we can read on. Next on our list of readers is Dr. Katharina Choplas, who is going to read for us some poetry about trees. I believe she has some of her own poetry as well as some poetry that she enjoys about trees.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, all the Talking Leaf staff, guests, editors, and George. Thank you very much, attendees, for this celebration of artists, writers, dreamers, and workers. I also want to thank the IUPUC and the Division of Liberal Arts for graciously granting me a sabbatical to develop these poems that I'm working on. It was part of my Echo Poetry collection that I'm working on, and that is Poetry in Search of a Small Press at this point as we get re-geared up again to go out into the small press world to publish our work. The theme of the collection is loosely situated, my collection, the one poem that I will read from that is loosely situated in the subgenre of echo poetry, and I question and ruminate the interrelated worlds of animals, plants, humans, and all the actors on the earth. The poems in the collection itself spark readers to consider how we, humans and animals, might understand and share in and see the natural world in different light. I will frame my original poem today about trees in the historical context of previous poems about trees. One from the 1800s, one from the 1900s, an Imagist poem. And in my research on trees, I found that many poems have been written usually in the female persona of the trees as a woman or a woman's body. And mine also looks at the trees as a human figure, but it takes my own unique twist to writing of the trees. So I wanted to first read Trees by Joyce Kilmer. This is a very familiar poem. And here the trees are embodied as kind of a pious and pure woman. I think I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the sweet earth's flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, whose intimate lives live with the rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. So I enjoyed that one as a good example of 19th century, 1800s poetry. I want to draw your attention to this very brief Imagist poem by William Carlos Williams, describing trees as attiring and disattiring. And I love that phrase, and I reclaimed it, and I used it in my work, and that is the trees dress and undress with their leaves. It's called Winter Trees. All the complicated details of the attiring and that disattiring are completed. A liquid moon moves gently among the long branches, thus having prepared their buds against a sure winter. The wise trees stand sleeping in the cold. So there's that voyeur image of somebody looking at these trees, dressing and undressing, and then naked in the winter cold and evening or midnight light, dark light. And one more I'd like to read. This is from 2003. It's called Green Pear Tree in September, a little more contemporary tone. And I'll just go ahead and read it. It's really about family. On a hill overlooking the Rock River, my father's pear tree shimmers in perfect peace, covered with hundreds of ripe pears with pert tops, plump bottoms, and long curled leaves. Until the green haloed tree rose up and sang hello, I had forgotten. He planted it 12 years ago when he was 73, so that in September he could stroll down with the sound of the crickets rising and falling around him and stand, naked to the waist, slightly bent, sucking juice from a ripe pear. And I love the sensuality of that piece. So I'm going to explain a few terms in my work. I do many allusions to either classical references or words that I've reclaimed from other pieces. So I will use the word susurrus, and this means a soft murmuring sound, a whispering, a susurrus. It was epitomized in the epic poem Evangeline by American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It was 1847. And a brief line from that is, this was their rural chapel, aloft through the intricate arches of its aerial roof, arose the chant of their vespers, mingling its notes with the soft susurrus and sounds of the branches. So I love that sound because it makes me think of when wind is going through the trees. What is that sound? And there is a word for that. I also mentioned Bucephalus in the poem, and that was the beloved horse of Alexander the Great. So I will mention the the Amish men who are in the poem, and they have their Bucephalus, their horses, their strong, mighty horses. And then, of course, Narcissus, who beneath the weeping willows falls in love with his image and drowns himself by the river's edge. Trees. Gaze. We take you seriously as living, sentient beings, only when we gaze on you as inhabitable bodies. The metaphor, your branches, arms, your trunk, a torso, your leaves chattering, whispering, sussurrus, sussurrus. Your body belongs to us. We watch you, attiring and disattiring. We tell you you hold power over us, like weeping willow, pensive, wet at the river's edge, where Narcissus drowned, where we hung our harps, where we bowed over the boggy swamps of Scotland. Far away, immortal in China, as beavers gnaw your bark, we name your seductive sister, sweet maple, dripping on our pancakes, your ugly cousin, sycamore, with her psoriatic peeling skin, and female ginkgo, full of soft, fleshy, stinking seeds. We love you best, ginkgo. Oh, ebony, we won't forget ebony, ancient ebony, black root of the earth ebony. We know you, trees. We own you, trees. Occupy. The logging trucks pitch and roll along the narrow rural roads to buzzing mills, to Carolina furniture factories, to those snippety, smug Euro homes consuming warm, cool white oak planking under their feet. You are like the lungs of the earth. You are a simile that converts the sun into hope. We trust you will continue to baptize us in oxygen. Forester. I told him to hire the Amish loggers with their thick horses, not heavy machinery or skids that ravish the forest floor. These are stout men who read the trees with their loyal Bucephalus. Yah, yah, gyup, yah, billowing their condensed breath, hooves precarious, slips sliding in mud, horses named Midnight, Moonlight, and Adam. Dragged down the trees felt respected, we said to ourselves. A year later, the paramour decided to trim that single branch overhanging the pine deck of the lake house, with chainsaw hungrily growling into the thick lateral with an engineer's geometry. By all dead reckoning, that branch should have fallen there. Our bodies have always been entwined with you, trees. We escape into the heartwood, the beating heart of the tree. Thank you.
It thrills my heart to share these poems with you, to share this book with you. Thank you for coming. I see Terry Dibble, another English faculty, has arrived. I want to thank all the English faculty, all the DLA faculty, every faculty member that supports student work and student creativity. We're collecting materials for the next magazine. So keep that support up. Let people know that the reading period is open. And we're hoping to get your work no later than the 20th of March. And we'll be putting together another magazine already. If you're interested in working as a copy editor, let Christian know. And any questions, come to me or Christian. Thanks again, everyone, for this incredible celebration that happens in the dark times of pandemic or the sunshine of the spring, wherever we are. And thanks for Tree Campus for joining us and collaborating to make such a beautiful event today. And I'm going to have George close us up here with his remarks. So we have our bookend with our leader.
All right, thank you, Lisa, very much. Well, thank you all for a wonderful afternoon. And in closing, I'd just like to circle back to something that Christian said to open his remarks, and how he came here to IUPUC and was hoping to find a way to express his thoughts on some issues that were very important to him. And it caused me to reflect upon the value of higher education, which is a topic that in our profession we're always concerned about, and maybe more so now than at most times. And to me, and as our session here this afternoon demonstrated, a very central value, maybe the most important value of higher education, is giving students the opportunity to identify with their humanity, to express what's inside of them, learn ways to express it, and to feel that self-actualization that comes from that. So again, it was just wonderful to hear the students present, and also to hear our faculty and staff members model that for them. So thanks to Jay and thanks to Kate for such wonderful readings that they did, and for our administration, as Joan demonstrated, to provide very provocative, very evocative avenues with the Tree Campus initiative to connect their work and their thoughts to that. So once again, thanks to Lisa for all the wonderful work she's done these many years to continue the tradition of Talking Leaves. And of course, as you can see behind me, this is an effort that's been going on for decades, and Terry and Kate and Lisa have been central to that throughout their incredibly dedicated careers to IUPUC. So once again, this is one of our greatest traditions. It's one of our most meaningful traditions that does the most for our students and for our campus. So thanks again to everybody for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon.